Okay, your strawberry plant looks incredible. Thick leaves, deep green, spreading like it owns the garden, and not a single strawberry in sight. Maybe you get a few flowers, they show up, look promising, and then nothing happens. No fruit, no payoff. At this point, most people assume they're doing something wrong, or worse, that strawberries are just difficult. But here's the truth. Your plant isn't confused, and it's definitely not failing. It's following a very clear set of signals, but the problem is, those signals are pushing it away from producing fruit. And once you understand what those signals are, everything changes. Welcome to Seed to Harvest, where we break down what's really going on in your garden and show you how to fix it fast. In this video, we're going through the 8 exact reasons your strawberries stop producing, and more importantly, how to flip each one back in your favor so your plants actually start giving you fruit. Let's get into it. Secret number 1, your plant is too young. Here's one that catches a lot of people off guard, especially if you just planted your strawberries recently. Your plant might simply be too young to produce properly yet. In its first year, a strawberry plant isn't focused on giving you fruit, it's focused on survival and setup. It's building out a strong root system underground, spreading itself out, anchoring into the soil, and storing energy for what comes next. Above ground, it might look healthy, even impressive, but below the surface, it's doing the real work. That's why you'll often see leaves and maybe even a few flowers, but nothing that actually turns into strawberries. The plant is basically saying, not yet. And this is where most people accidentally slow themselves down without realizing it. Those early flowers feel like progress, so you leave them on hoping for fruit. But what you're really doing is pulling energy away from root development. The smarter move, even though it feels wrong, is to pinch those flowers off in year 1. It redirects everything back to building a stronger, more established plant. Then when year 2 comes around, you don't get a weak, hesitant harvest. You get a plant that's ready to produce properly. So if your strawberries are still in their first season, the real question is, are you letting them rush into fruiting too early, or are you setting them up to explode with production next season? Secret number 2, the nitrogen trap. Now let's talk about something that feels like the right move, but quietly works against you. Feeding your plants. You water them, you care for them, and then you give them fertilizer to boost growth. And it works fast. Your strawberries respond with thick, oversized leaves, deep color, and rapid growth that makes everything look like it's going perfectly. From the outside, it's exactly what you want to see. But here's what's actually happening. The plant is being pushed into vegetative mode. It's putting all its energy into producing foliage because that's what nitrogen-heavy feeding tells it to do. In simple terms, you're rewarding leaf growth so heavily that fruit production becomes a low priority. The plant isn't refusing to produce, it's just been given a different job. To shift it back, you need to change the signal you're sending. This is where phosphorus and potassium come in, the nutrients that support flowering and fruit development. Instead of feeding for growth, you start feeding for production. That means dialing back anything high in nitrogen and moving towards something more balanced or slightly fruit-focused. Even better, you can go the slower route and improve the soil itself, adding compost, organic matter, or natural amendments that release nutrients gradually instead of flooding the plant all at once. When you do this, you'll notice a change in behavior, fewer aggressive leaves, more flowers that actually hold, and a plant that starts acting like it understands the assignment again. So take a look at what you've been feeding your strawberries. Are you accidentally training them to stay leafy instead of productive? Secret number 3, the runner drain. This one is easy to miss because it actually looks like your plant is thriving. You start seeing long stems shooting out in every direction, spreading across the soil, trying to root wherever they land. It feels like success, like your strawberries are multiplying and taking over the space. But what's actually happening is your plant is shifting into expansion mode. Every runner it sends out is pulling from the same energy reserve the plant would normally use for flowering and fruiting. Instead of investing in strawberries, it's investing in making copies of itself. And the more runners you allow, that energy gets divided. Before you know it, you've got a bed full of small, underpowered plants all competing, none of them producing the way they should. The fix is straightforward, but it requires consistency. You have to step in and control that spread. When you cut runners early and regularly, you're essentially telling the plant to stop expanding and start focusing inward again. That energy gets redirected back into strengthening the main plant and supporting fruit production instead of fueling endless growth outward. If you do want new plants, you can be selective. Let 1 or 2 runners root properly, then separate them once they're established, but everything else needs to go. Once you start doing this, the shift is noticeable. Fewer distractions for the plant, more effort going into flowers that actually develop into fruit. So when you look at your strawberry bed right now, are you seeing a productive setup or a plant that's spreading itself too thin to deliver anything meaningful?
Secret number 4, the crowding problem. Even if you've been cutting runners, there's another layer to this that builds up over time: physical space. Strawberry plants don't just need nutrients and water, they need room to function properly. When they're packed too tightly together, everything starts to work against them. Light struggles to reach the lower leaves, air stops moving freely between plants, and moisture lingers longer than it should. That combination creates a quiet kind of stress. The plant isn't collapsing, it's just operating below its potential. Growth becomes uneven, flowers don't develop as strongly, and fruit production drops without any obvious warning sign. It turns into a dense, leafy patch that looks alive but doesn't perform. What makes this tricky is that it happens gradually, so most people don't step in early enough. A bed that started perfectly spaced can turn overcrowded within a season or 2, especially if new plants are allowed to establish without a plan. The solution is to be intentional about spacing, not just at planting, but as an ongoing habit. That means thinning out excess plants, removing weaker ones, and keeping only those that have enough room to fully develop. When each plant has access to light, airflow, and soil resources without constant competition, the difference shows up quickly in how it behaves. You go from a congested patch to a system where each plant can actually perform. So take a step back and look at your bed as a whole. Does each plant have space to thrive, or are they quietly competing in a way that's holding everything back? Secret number 5, crown depth. This is one of those small details that doesn't look important at first glance, but it quietly controls how your entire plant performs. The crown, that central point where the leaves emerge, is extremely sensitive to how it's positioned in the soil. If it ends up buried too deep, it stays constantly exposed to moisture with limited airflow, which can lead to rot setting in before you even notice anything is wrong. On the other hand, if it's sitting too high above the soil, the roots underneath struggle to stay consistently hydrated, especially in warm conditions, which weakens the plant over time. In both cases, the plant doesn't necessarily die, it just underperforms, and fruit production becomes inconsistent or disappears altogether. Getting this right comes down to precision during planting and awareness afterwards. The crown needs to sit exactly at soil level, where it can stay dry enough to avoid damage, but still connected to a stable root environment below. It's a balance that supports both structure and function, allowing the plant to move water and nutrients efficiently while keeping its most sensitive point protected. This becomes even more important after watering, rainfall, or soil settling, because the position can shift without you realizing it. Taking a moment to check and adjust when needed can make a noticeable difference in how the plant develops over time. So if your strawberries look healthy but aren't producing the way they should, have you actually checked where the crown is sitting, or are you just assuming it's in the right place?
Secret number 6, the pollination gap. This is one of the most frustrating situations because everything can look perfect on the surface. You'll see healthy flowers forming, strong growth, everything pointing toward a good harvest, and then nothing happens after that stage. The flowers open, sit there for a while, and slowly fade without turning into fruit. What's going on here is a breakdown in pollination. Strawberries rely on pollen being transferred between flowers for proper fruit development, and if that transfer doesn't happen efficiently, the process stops right there. It doesn't matter how healthy the plant looks or how well you fed it. Without that step being completed, the fruit simply won't form. This issue becomes more common in areas where insect activity is low or inconsistent, or when plants are grown in environments that limit access for natural pollinators. Even subtle things like heavy rain periods, strong winds, or isolated growing setups can reduce the chances of proper pollen movement. The good news is that it's something you can work around fairly easily once you recognize it. Supporting pollinator activity in your garden space helps a lot, but you can also step in directly when needed by gently moving pollen between flowers yourself. It's a simple action, but it bridges the gap when nature isn't doing it fast enough. So if your plants are flowering but nothing is forming afterward, have you actually considered whether the problem is happening at the pollination stage, or have you been assuming everything is being handled naturally? Secret number 7. Your plants are just old. This one is hard for people to accept because it doesn't look like a problem at first. The plant is still alive, still putting out leaves, still holding its shape in the garden, so it feels like everything should still be working. But strawberries have a productivity window, and once they pass it, their behavior slowly shifts. They stop putting the same energy into fruiting and start leaning more into maintenance mode. You'll notice the structure getting thicker and more woody at the base, fewer strong flower cycles, and smaller, less reliable output even when conditions look perfect. It's not that the plant suddenly fails, it just quietly moves past its peak and never announces it. What makes this tricky is that gardeners often try to fix what is actually a natural decline. More feeding, more water, more attention, but none of it fully restores what time has already taken away. At a certain point, replacement is the real solution, not correction. New plants bring back that early stage energy where growth and fruit production are both strong at the same time, while older plants simply can't return to that level no matter how well they're managed. This is why experienced growers rotate their strawberry beds on a cycle instead of holding on to the same plants indefinitely. So if your strawberries are still standing but production has quietly dropped season after season, are you dealing with a problem you can fix or a plant that has simply reached its natural limit? Secret number 8. Temperature and light stress. This one is sneaky because the plant often looks completely normal right up until it stops producing. The leaves can stay green, growth can continue, and nothing visually screams problem, but internally the plant is reacting to environmental pressure. Strawberries are very sensitive to temperature shifts, especially prolonged heat or unexpected cold. When conditions move outside their preferred range, the plant prioritizes survival over reproduction. That means flower development slows down or stops entirely, and any fruit that was starting to form gets abandoned. It's not damage you can easily spot. It's more like the plant quietly switching off production mode until conditions feel safe again. Light plays just as big a role, and it's often underestimated. Too little sunlight reduces the plant's ability to initiate flowering in the first place, while too much intense heat paired with strong direct sun can push it into stress response, even if water is available. The balance matters more than people think, and small environmental shifts can change everything without warning. Shade during peak heat, consistent access to morning sun, and protection during sudden cold snaps all help keep the plant in its productive zone. Once that balance is off, fruiting becomes inconsistent no matter how well everything else is managed. So if your strawberries are healthy but unpredictable, have you checked whether the environment itself is quietly shutting production down without you realizing it? And that's really the full picture. When strawberries stop producing, it rarely comes down to just one big mistake. It's usually a mix of small things stacking up quietly in the background. Energy going into runners instead of fruit, feeding that pushes growth in the wrong direction, plants that have simply aged out of their best years, or environmental conditions that are just a little off for too long. The good thing is, once you start recognizing these patterns, it stops feeling random. You can walk into your garden and actually read what the plant is telling you instead of guessing. So here's the simple move from here. Don't try to fix everything at once. Just go back through the list and pick the one issue that looks most familiar in your setup. Start there, correct it, and give the plant a little time to respond. Most of the time, the shift shows up faster than people expect once the main blockage is removed. And if you found this helpful, stick around with Seed to Harvest. There's plenty more like this coming, breaking down what's really happening in your garden and how to turn it around without overcomplicating it.